Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Winterfylleth, the Imperious Horizon, out September 13th on Spine Farm Records. The album has 11 tracks, 75 minutes in length, and this is the band's 8th full-length studio album. They are an English black metal band. Now, before I even press play on this record, obviously looking at the track listing, 11 songs, 75 minutes, it felt that perhaps this was going to be a very daunting record to listen to. That was going to be very demanding of the listener. It's obviously demanding from a length and time perspective, but it's an album that feels super easy to digest, and it has a great design, a great structure attached to it, which actually makes the record feel a lot shorter, and that adds playability. It makes the record feel a lot more dynamic, a lot more fluid, a lot more engaging. I really enjoyed the way they designed this record because it was able to make the experience better. It took away all the possible negatives that would come from an album of this length and actually made them into positives that allowed the record to have great life, great energy from top all the way to the bottom. Once it comes into the sound, I think you have to break down the sound into three main core elements, but all of them put together make this a very rich sounding album. It's a very textured sounding album, but I think it's predominantly a very rich sounding album. And what are those three elements? I think you have to look at the black metal part of the band's sound, you have to look at the atmosphere of the sound, and then the production that brings those two elements together. As far as the black metal side of the sound, this album has some of that narrow, creepy, somber, dark, grimy, black metal inspired and driven riffs that are such a huge part of this band's DNA. You're gonna find them on every single song, and they are there to define the cornerstone and to define the spinal cord, not just of what the band is all about, but of what their music, the essence of their music, really lives off of. And this album has that great middle piece on every single track that allows you to see that darkness, that allows you to see that black metal essence that Winterfylleth has, predominantly living on, I said on every track, not on every single track, but in 95% of the tracks on this record. It's such a huge core element that would be almost impossible to create an album where that element is not one of the main driving forces, and on this record definitely is. But it's not alone. It's not alone. Around it you have this atmospheric essence that in some of the previous albums was a lot darker, which allowed the record to almost collapse upon itself. And on this album, I felt like it was actually a lot brighter. At times with some symphonic elements, makes it even feel cinematic. So what this does is allows you to have this core spinal element, which is the black metal riffs, the black metal sound in the center, and then surround that with clarity, surround that with this incredible atmosphere that makes the songs feel larger than life, that gives them incredible width. And then with the production that comes in, you have tracks that are at some point narrow, or that feel like they have a narrow core, but they have this incredible foundation that is a lot larger than what that core represents. This creates movement in the tracks that already have forward movement. This creates lateral movement, almost like the tracks are a heartbeat. They're pumping out and they're pumping in. They're pumping out and then pumping in. This is the lifeline of this record. This is the essence, the core of how the album and the sound of the album is designed. I really enjoyed this experience because it's not every day that you listen to a black metal record that sounds as bright, that has this kind of crisp and clear production around that atmosphere, that you can feel like you're being driven through this blackness, you're being driven through these grimy riffs, but there's still clarity somewhere around it, defining what the overall size of the songs are. I think this is the beauty of the album, and definitely the selling point of how this record puts together. Shows a lot of maturity, shows a lot of understanding of the band's sound and the evolution that that sound has had across 8 albums. Now, within this overall sound, I want to mention the guitars and drums, because the guitars on this record are phenomenal, super rich. A lot of the richness that I was talking about earlier really comes from the guitar sound. Very diverse in its approach and the textures, elevating the overall quality of the album with so many great guitar moments, so many great guitar melodies, so many great guitar solos. This album has so much to offer guitar-wise. It almost feels like a guitar clinic when it comes to a more atmospheric black metal sounding album. And the drums are not that far behind. Magnificent sound, completing the overall richness of essence that the guitars offer. The drums are really there to create some substance, and on those more narrow driven songs, they are pushing the song forward with the guitars in mind, together holding hands, creating this magnificent dark and grimy wall of sound. But in the tracks that have a little bit more size, where that atmosphere has a different impact, the drums are there in order to help expand, almost separating themselves from the guitars a little bit and helping expand that footprint. So great work on those two elements as far as the overall record is concerned. Then you have a very consistent vocal performance. Outside of a guest appearance by Alan Averill of Primordial, you have a very consistent vocal performance that it's perhaps one of the core elements of darkness, of this somber output that represents the lyrics extremely well, song in and song out. It's a vocal approach that, while being consistent across each and every single track, it still gets the most out of the sound that's underneath it. Regardless if it's a more driven song, regardless if it's a more methodic song, the same vocal approach delivers the essence of the lyrics, the essence of the stories that are being told within these songs, and the sound somehow morphs to it, or the vocals morph to the sound. It's one of those, the chicken or the egg. I'm not quite sure which one came first, but the consistency of the vocals and still having the ability to match the energy of each and every single song is something really to speak of. Now, overall, this is the band's 8th record, and I feel like this is one of those bands that every album that they release, you'll hear people say that this is their best record ever. And I'm going to sit here and say that this is my favorite album from the band. I think this is their most mature record, is their most elevated record, the one where I find that they really discover this incredible atmospheric essence that works so well with the darker side of their sound. As far as favorite songs goes, I want to start off with Like Brimming Fire. This is a very driven song. This is one of those that has that prototypical black metal essence to it. There's not a lot of atmosphere to this track. It's a little bit more narrow, a little bit more to the point, a little bit more direct. The guitars and drums do all the heavy lifting as far as that darkness and that drive is concerned. The vocals bring in a sense of despair. Once again, consistent vocal performance, but adding something here and there that creates some uniquenesses within the songs. And in this one, it almost felt like a sense of despair was coming through in the vocal performance. You still have some very melodic guitar riffs. Once again, speaking of the guitar diversity, texture, and richness, you have that dark, heavy, driven, grimy sound, and then you have this melodic essence that comes as an underlining to create that texture within the track, still maintaining that push forward that the black metal side of the track has, but infusing that melodic undertone in order to create more texture. A track that feels relentless at times, that it's dark, that is driven, but like I said, still melodic and still very rich all around. Next we have In Silent Grace. This is my favorite track. There's no questions. This song, the moment I heard this song, I was completely floored by the quality of the track. It's the one featuring Alan of Primordial, and the clean vocals on this song. Talk about a haunting performance. The clean vocals are just that, haunting. You get goosebumps when you listen to this track. It has a great guitar opening. You see the growth in that guitar sound. You see the richness in that guitar sound. A song that, with that kind of an intro, really tells you everything that you need to know about the quality of the guitar sound throughout the entire record, but it's really noticeable on this song. It sets the tone for the track, for the epicness of the track, for the vibe of the track, for the overall melody of the track, and you see the progression from the beginning. This is a song that keeps adding layers to it, and vocally super powerful to match the same power and intensity that you're getting out of the sound. Like I said, the clean vocals, haunting, which help define the overall epicness of the track. I feel like this, if this song had harsh vocals from start to finish, those harsh vocals would almost close down the song, or would bring the mood of the song completely down, and wouldn't allow the track to sound as open, as atmospheric, as epic as it does. And this track needed those clean vocals in order to do that, in order to elevate a little bit of the brightness and use the clean vocals to emphasize that more somber nature of the atmosphere that this song carries. Last but not least, the Insurrection. Menacing vocals on this track. Here you have 3 songs, 3 different vocal performances, consistent but different. Obviously in Silent Grace you have a guest vocalist and you have clean vocals, but on the other 2, like Brimming Fire and the Insurrection, you have a similar vocal style, but the vocal style offers you, with the sound behind it, a completely different perspective of what the vocals are all about. And this track is a more menacing aspect. It's a very, it has a very driven sound. It's not a super dark song, but because it has some wider experiences to it. It has some wider moments to it when you compare it to like Brimming Fire, which feels a little bit more narrow. It has some dark tones on the edges of the sound. The song, guitar-wise, feels a little bit more clean, but the edges of that guitar sound has that griminess, has that dirt, in order to bring that black metal influence into what the track is all about. It really embraces it in the way it's put together. There are some heavier portions throughout this song where they're not as methodic, but even those heavier portions find a way of infusing some melody in it, which dilutes a little bit of that heavier experience and allows the track to feel a little bit more uniform, a little bit more balanced from beginning to end. Great sounding track as well. This is it, Winterfylleth with the Imperious Horizon, out September 13th on Spinefarm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.